Hey, okay, so the idea in this little video, it's to continue my net code for the game objects learning thing, and kind of show how to do stuff. So right now I need we had the little host and join screen, and once we host or we join, we get this little username screen where we just have a input field and a little button to send this username to the server. Okay, so right now, here's the username input field UI helper class, which simply makes sure the functionality of this UI is working. Like, we have the username input field, which is this, the boot, and we have a little route to deactivate the object once we send the username. Okay, so on start we simply set the events, like firstly setting the button not to be interactable, because we want to validate the size of the username. Like, for example, okay, now we have a valid username and now we don't. Okay, then we just add a little on click listener to our on submit button pressed, which is where the networking starts. So once we click this button, we call this function here called update player name server RPC, and we will pass our local ID of our local client. I actually have my own version of the network manager, and I have this local ID kind of pre-processed here just so it's easier to get. Okay, so here's the local ID, and the local ID sends us the network manager dot local client dot client ID. So it's just to make the line smaller, make things simpler. Okay, wait, okay, right, and okay, we send this ID, and we send the text from this input field, which is this little thing here. And then we set the root false, which is deactivating the UI once we send the information. Okay, so in the update player function, here we can see the client ID and the new name. And now with netcode for GameObjects, we have this little client RPC params that we have to declare, because I actually don't remember why we need this. We probably don't need this. I will figure it out later, because we already have the ID. But basically, I think the reason why we have this in the netcode for GameObjects framework is because we can send something for more than one client. So here we are creating a little array of one object just, but we can do more if we want. So we ignore this part. Okay, next we get the player object, which is a little class that I created just to hold some player data. Well, right now it just do the player name. Okay, so we get the player object, and I have this little function that I also created on the my network manager to get the player to get the object. Okay, so in this function, I just send the client ID, and we do this little thing here, which is network manager dot connect the client, and we pass the ID that we have to get the client with this ID, and then we get the player object, which is actually a built-in variable, and we get the component player object. I know we shouldn't do like much get component, but I actually don't know a better way to do this. Okay, so we get the player object, and we actually can remove all these and just put client ID. I was kind of tired when I wrote this. Okay, so with that new player object, we call the update player name function with the name that we just got. So this function is here in the player object, and this is the function here. You can see that we don't require ownership of the object to execute this function, and we simply update the value, and then we call that on the client just to make sure everything is synced up. Here is also a little example on how synchronizing variables works. Basically, we have to declare everything that we want to synchronize with a network variable, and we have to use declare the type of this variable, which is I'm pretty sure you just need it to not be null and be able to serialize, like be able to create a variable without starting the program. So okay, once we create that, we need to change the variable only by using the variable dot value. That's how we can change the value of this value. The value of this variable. Okay, so how we actually make this work? In the documentation we have something like this, which is we simply get the wake function, and we type our variable and dot on value changed, which is an event from on this variable, on the network variable type, and we simply prescribe or a on player name change function. You can just use the name of your variable here, like on variable name change it, you know. Okay, so on declaring that function, we just gotta use the type of the variable we put here, and create a old variable name and new variable name. We don't need to actually write anything inside this function. The framework already does that for us. So that's how we synchronize the player object player name variable for all the clients. Okay, so then after we synchronize, we update our name, we want to add this user to the lobby. I'll show you what I mean by this in a second. But basically, we call the lobby user avatar, which is a little also UI helper class that I created, and we call this user avatar server RPC. We also send the user ID here, and okay, we create the little UI instance, and we get the user display UI helper class. Then we get a network object of this class, of this object, sorry, and we gotta spawn it on this server. Then this is how we set the parent, because I actually have a horizontal grid alignment, and it's based on the children of the parent object. So we just set the parent. This should work for for synchronization, you know. There is this little function here. I don't know how well it works. Then we simply get the player object using the ID that we just got, and well, also we change the ownership of this new object to the new ID we got from the server, and then we set the label of this UI to the player name, which works kind of the same way we did the other in the player object thing. We just have a network variable with a fixed string type. I have a label using a text component. One thing I know it's a little different is that on start I do this. I do label.text equals to label name.value. What this does is once we join the game, like in a late join, the name will update, you know, it will get the actual name. And the reason why it's two values here is because the first value just get a fixed string value, and the second value actually get the string value that we have inside this. It's a little confusing, but it works. Also, before that we change the scale to 1 because for some reason when we spawn the UI the scale is not right. I don't know why this happens. I know that there's a little variable that keeps the word's position and scale, but it doesn't work, I think, for the online purposes. So we simply set the scale to 1. Then it's actually just that. We just make sure that we change the label with a client RPC to make sure we change all the client labels. We change the label for all the clients. Okay, so now let's test it. Let me see if it actually works now. I'm not sure how well it is performing. Okay, so join here, and we have 2 players. Okay, nice. Now I'll disconnect and connect again, and you can see that the player will not disconnect here because I don't actually have that worked out yet, because it seems like it's a little bit complicated. Okay, so now we have 3 players, and you can see that this late join updated the previous labels. I think that's it for today. Hopefully I think we can get the disconnect system in the next video working properly. So bye, I guess.